Welcome to video 5 in chapter 9, where we will look at literacy, reading and writing. And we'll begin with talking a little bit about early reading skills, what's known as emergent literacy, the set of skills that develop before children begin formal schooling and that provide the foundation for these academic skills. As it says here, at the heart of emergent literacy is the interaction between an adult and the child. And so there are vast differences in how prepared children are to begin reading when they reach formal schooling, when they reach kindergarten. There are certainly children that can already write their names or spell their names, and they may already know their ABCs by the time they get to kindergarten. Other children see the letter A and they have no idea what you're talking about. I mean, like, they just don't even recognize any of the letters or anything. I mean, there are vast differences, because unlike language learning, where I stressed over and over that children were analyzing the speech that they hear and learning about syntax and grammar and vocabulary, just through being exposed to language. Basically, they were learning on their own. As children, we don't really teach children how to speak. They learn on their own. But reading's a very different skill. They do not pick it up on their own. It is something that we help them to learn from an early age. And so when we talk about the interaction between an adult and child, we're talking about things like reading often to the child and pointing out, letter sound combinations and teaching them how to spell their name and a lot of things that the majority of parents will engage in during the preschool years. But once again, some children really lack emergent literacy. They enter school already behind the majority of children and not knowing anything about language or reading or letter sound correspondences. One way to help with teaching emergent literacy is to engage in what's called dialogic reading with a child. So this is reading between an adult and a child where, you take turns at times being the storyteller versus the listener or questioner. And so it's one thing to read to a child and just, make sure you say all the words and just go through the story quickly. But it's completely another thing to engage in an active process where, you are engaging them in the story and asking them questions and having them at times tell you the story. After a child's, after you've read the same book to a child a number of times, have them engage, have them tell you the story, turn the pages and they obviously can't read all the words yet, but if they know the story, if you've read it to them enough times, you can actually have them tell you the story, and you can ask them questions about it. Well, why is Curious George doing this now? And I mean, he's lost. He's looking for the man in the yellow coat or whatever. So dialogical reading is about being engaging in an active process of engaging the child in the story, asking them questions about it, having them tell you parts of the story, or asking them questions about what's happening in the story. The one basic technique is to use the peer strategy. I'm not really getting into this, but it stands for prompt, evaluate, expand, repeat. What I am going to get into is 5 different types of prompts that can be used with a child. These are different types of questions to ask a child during reading. So let me go through this list here. First of all, we have what's called completion prompts. These are like fill in the blanks, where you have the kind of a blank at the end of a sentence. So, Curious George, he's looking for the man in the yellow coat. Yeah, yes, that's right, coat. So I don't know. You give them a little sentence, you leave a word off at the end, and you have them fill it in for you. That's a completion prompt. And it just shows that they're following the story, they're understanding what's happening. A recall prompt is when you ask about what's already happened in the story that you're reading. So, why is it that Curious George is looking for the man in the yellow coat? Oh, he got lost when they went to the fair, he got separated and lost, or something like that, So you have them think about what's already happened. A third type of prompt is called the open-ended prompt. And basically, typically the way you use this one is you ask them what's happening in the picture in a book. Obviously, children's books have pictures, so you can before you actually read the words on the page, you can say, oh, what's happening here, and you have them look at the picture to describe what's happening. And then if you actually then read the words on the page, like you're reinforcing what they've just told you, what's happening in the story. And they're learning that, the words go together with the pictures and there's a connection here. So they're learning about what words are for. And then the fourth type of prompt is called a W prompt. This just means that you're asking them what, where, when, why, and how questions. So kind of more specific questions about something in the story. Where is Curious George right now? Or I don't know. Why is he looking for the man in the yellow coat? Okay, anyways, and then the fifth type is called distancing prompts. And this is where you make some kind of connection between whatever you're reading them and, something in the real world, real life. So maybe I'm reading my child this Curious George story where he gets lost, and I say, hey, do you remember when you got a little bit lost, when you were shopping with mommy and you couldn't find her, and you have them you have them recall a little story about when they got lost in the supermarket or something, and how scared they were, and this way they're connecting something that happened in their life to what's happening in this particular story, where maybe Curious George is lost. Oh, he must be really scared like I was. Anyways, so 5 types of prompts. I could ask you about these on the test: completion, recall, open-ended, W prompts, and distancing. 2 approaches to learning to read in school that have been used throughout history. And actually, there was a lot of debate about these 2 approaches throughout much of the 1900s, and there were people that supported one approach versus the other, and then we'll see that there's in between answer. There always is, but the two approaches were the phonics versus whole language approach. Most people are familiar with what phonics means. It's a basic skills approach. You show them the letter A and you show them a picture of an apple and the word apple, and you say, look, A makes the ass sound and in apple, and then you get to B and you have a picture of a bear, and B stands for bear. It sounds like buh buh buh. Anyways, like, and so it's kind of what we call a bottom up approach. You try to teach them and have them recognize the sound that each letter makes, so then they can start to try to make sense of words by reading them a letter at a time. And so you get children, looking at a word like, I don't know, like, I let's pick up the word reading, okay, on this page. I mean, so they start going, read, ing, okay, whatever. And then hopefully they figure out this is reading. Um, so that would be a phonics approach, letter by letter. You know, think of the sounds they make, try to string them together. The whole language approach, as it says here, involves using reading materials with an inherent interest for the child. So it's not about teaching the individual letters, it's about exposing the child to a lot of written language. You read to them a lot, pointing out words as you read. Um, you might use little signs with words on it, like at home in playtime. Like it's like, maybe every time you give your child an apple, you show them a little card that says apple. And when they every time they eat pizza, you show them the word pizza on the box, and plus one, you're reading to them a lot. So this is the idea behind the whole language approach, is that we learn to speak without any formal training. We learn to speak because we're exposed to language. We hear a whole bunch of language, and then we learn the rules. We learn syntax and grammar. No one teaches us as infants and toddlers and preschoolers. We just learn it on our own. So people came up with the idea that perhaps if you just show enough words to a child and you read to them a lot, and they keep being exposed to language, they would just start to recognize whole words and to be able to read them. So after a while, the child, will see the word apple and know it says apple, even though they've never learned any of the individual letters. But they see the configuration of the five letters that make up apple, and they can recognize that shape configuration, and they say, oh, that says apple. Um, and as it says here, you try to use things that are interesting to the child. So if a child's into dinosaurs, I mean, have all the dinosaurs that they have labeled, and have little, make sure that they have words to go with each of them. So they'll start to recognize this is Tyrannosaurus Rex. They don't possibly know all the letters in that long word. They're not reading it letter by letter, but they see the starting with the big T, and it's starting with the T, and it's a long word, and it's got a certain shape, and then the Rex comes at the end, and they just see it and know, oh, this is Tyrannosaurus Rex. That's a whole language approach. There was a lot of debate between these approaches. Um, some people believe that using the whole language approach would stunt a child's language learning, that they really need some phonics. Recent evidence kind of supports that you do need some phonics training. You do have to learn some letter sound correspondences. But if you only teach phonics, children don't really learn the purpose of language. They learn a whole bunch of letters and what the sounds are, and then they can piece out, sound out words, but they don't really kind of get the whole picture that what we use language for, and that it makes up stories, and that it tells us that there's pizza in this box, and and that language applies to things. you get that through a lot of exposure to language on signs and in books. And so anyways, obviously there is a halfway point. The balanced reading approach is what most experts recommend now. You use both types of approaches. You do some basic phonics training, but you also make sure that children get exposed to whole words and without sounding them out, like just that you read a lot to the child and that you have signs with words on them. And in schools you'll see that there are all sorts of signs around a beginning classroom in kindergarten or something that that will show complete words with a picture, and every time they see that picture of an apple that goes with the word apple, they're learning that particular shape of 5 letters represents an apple. Okay, let's go on. I don't really get into the writing skills as far as teaching. I'm going to leave this for you to read on your own. So read about early writing skills, and we'll talk about this slide a little bit. So early writing skills does begin with often with inventive spelling. If you've been around young children, you've seen this. So a child that's just learning to write letters and words and trying to write words. I mean, if they want to write the word train, they'll probably put TRAN, right? Because it's got all the sounds they want. Train. Okay. But once they enter into elementary school, they start to learn the more conventional rules about letter combinations and combination of letters that makes certain sounds. So they'll eventually learn that you get the long A sound in train because the I comes after it, and what sounds C and H makes together, and T and H and things like that. So that comes with experience, particularly formal schooling. Okay, let's go on here. Communicating ideas. Children tend to use what's called knowledge telling to communicate ideas. This knowledge telling just basically means that you tell as much as you know about a topic with little or no organization. So if you ask a child about their trip to the zoo, they might start off saying, "Oh yeah, there was elephants and giraffes and we had popcorn at at lunchtime, and the popcorn was really good, and we walked a long way, and there was also tigers and lions, and maybe it's like they would tell you without a lot of organization. There'll be no start to finish, and it's just kind of as they remember any detail, they just add it to their story. So knowledge telling is about just kind of spitting out a memory, or without any organization of time or topic. And this is very typical of children, as we move into adolescence and then eventually adulthood, we go from knowledge telling into knowledge transforming. So when you write an essay for this class, you are engaged in knowledge transforming, which is transforming information into ideas that you share in the writing. So it conveys a deeper understanding of the material and what you want to communicate. So it's purposely picking out an ordering to what you write, and you have a purpose behind the ordering of points in your essay, and this is known as knowledge transforming. You're trying to communicate an idea rather than just a series of memories, like, and then we did this, and then we did this, and then we did, like a child would do. Um, in recent years, as it says here, written language has been influenced by electronic communications such as texting. I can tell you right now that many of us professors really hate some of this influence. It's not appropriate to use any kind of texting slang in college papers. Don't give me an LOL, you know, in a college paper, for instance. Um, you can talk about laughing out loud if you want, but I don't really want to see any texting short forms. I hate texting to begin with. I very rarely ever text, and I don't know a lot of the short forms, but I also just find them kind of vulgar and like it's just sure they have their purpose, but not when you move from texting to typing a paper, as a document. Okay, so try not to use texting in your essays. And this will finish the section on emergent literacy. Once again, I've left some of it for you to read on your own, so make sure you do that. And that will end video 5.